I'm so excited to share this with you. Science Writing Task for Inquiry and Spiral Review. This is just a very general overview of this approach. I use this approach in my class, and when I tell you that it works, I see the amount of students that turn in their writing tasks increase steadily over the year as I implement this. Students are much more confident, they're much more willing to try. I've had students who were unwilling to even attempt to write a sentence at the end of the year, tell me that writing an essay was easy later. Other teachers have told me that it works. And so I'm super excited to share this with you because I know that it's good. Okay, so to start, we're going to talk about just like sort of my framework for instruction in science. If you've watched any of my stuff, you've probably heard me talking about making students feel seen. I feel very strongly that is this the basis of getting students interested and invested in science. One of the reasons that students struggle with science so much is because it's presented as this very serious thing and this thing that only a select group of people can be good at. And they don't feel like that's them. And so we have to make sure that they are able to view themselves as a scientist and as a person that does science. And so I have 3 C's that I reference as my way of doing that. And that is by building connection, stimulating curiosity, showing care. And the overlaps of that lead to relationship and community, student self-efficacy and confidence, engagement and understanding with our content, and that culminates in a supportive, welcoming, and inclusive class culture. And so we're trying to make sure social emotional needs are met, contextualizing our content, and adding in some of those historical things that happened in science that aren't always in our curricula, but are reflective of the actual diversity of the world, and encouraging their curiosity. And I just want to point out that you'll notice like this talks about the teacher too. It's not just about students. All 3 of these C's also applies to teachers and teacher well-being. So when I think about spiral review, I think a lot of times we overcomplicate it. This is going to be real simple using this concept map. Actually, all we're doing is thinking about what else in our curriculum we can connect whatever the topic we're currently on to. And we want to think backwards and forwards. So osmosis, thinking backwards in at least the way that we approach it where I teach, I'm thinking about homeostasis and cell organelles. And so I'm making a note to include that in this lesson. And then thinking forwards, I think about evolution and ecology for osmosis. And so I'm making a note to myself that when I get to evolution and when I get to ecology, that I'm going to wrap osmosis back into those lessons. Okay. And so then I know like teachers, we often don't have nearly as much time as we should, right? It's just the nature of the job. And so, and also we have a lot to do. We're busy, busy people. And so we always, if we have something, we want to start there. So if you have writing tasks that are already made, we don't have to throw them out. We can use it as a starting point to, and just apply it to this strategy. And so in this case, I'm looking at a CER about mummification and cell transport and the movement of water in osmosis and tonicity. And so I am going to keep this in mind. I might even use it at the end of this lesson in its exact same form, but I'm not getting rid of it. And so what I did was from here, I just started looking into mummification a little bit more. And that led me to this story about the salt men, which were mummified remains that were found in a salt mine. And it turns out that they were killed over 3,500 years in different times when salt mines collapsed on top of them. But the bodies are super well preserved because of the salt, right? And we know that as the instructors, but our students don't know that. And so this is what's key with our engage or our hook or whatever it is that you and your colleagues call it, is it's something that is not obviously connected to science, but it does connect with our students' interest and it's sparking their curiosity. So with our engage, we really want to get our students curious and we want to provide care and build their confidence. And so we're going to ask them like, oh, just read over it, or it could be a video, it could be a picture, it can be like an historical anecdote like this. And we're going to be like, what are you noticing? What questions do you have? And we just want to get them talking. And because it's not obviously about science, they're more willing to have these conversations. And then we're going to give them this guiding question. Well, why were they so well preserved? Like our students, they're not slow. So they're going to know like that's related to what we're learning, but it's still so zoomed out that they're a little bit more comfortable having that conversation. And then also like I do the most. I like my stuff to look, I like it to be all nice and fancy and cutesy. So like I make this whole little fake news article. You ain't gotta do all that. if you just have like Times New Roman text at the top of a paper, it still works. It doesn't have to be this all fancy and put together. So from Engage, if y'all use the 5 E's, that's what I'm approaching this from. But if you don't use the 5 E's, it still works. It's the same thing, pretty much we all are doing. We're gonna go into the Explore. And so I'm giving them data now. And so numerical data, quantitative, numerical, or qualitative data, pictures, graphs, any of that, all of it works. And we're just gonna ask them, like, what do you see pattern wise? What similarities are we seeing? What's sticking out, right? And as we're making notes, we're also going to encourage students to make models. So we see, like, I've provided the beginnings of a model here, and I'll probably do that model, right, with student input. And then we'll probably do at least one of the models together. And then I'll encourage students to do at least one or two, like maybe one or two with the partner and then one by themselves, right? So every step of this, we're going through like the I do, we do. There's not too much you do yet. It's mostly like modeling it for our students and then having them kind of help us do it as a collective. And again, what this is doing is building student confidence. And since we're still using the same topic of the mummies, we're still inciting their curiosity. So now at this point, like they're saying, okay, I saw a lot of salt in that last slide, and then, like in the beginning, I'm still seeing all this salt, but now I see this stuff about water, and they're going to come up with what is actually pretty close to the scientific explanation. And we want to make sure we're writing down what students are saying. We want to keep their language as often as possible. And we also want to show them if you're not necessarily comfortable with something, if you misspell a word, if you misread some data, that's fine. We want to show our students that mistakes are just a part of the learning process, that science is a practice of making mistakes and keeping going. And that is also going to be building their confidence and their willingness to even try it all. So from here, we on our Engage came up with sort of a claim or a hypothesis to this guiding question of how are these remains so well preserved, right? We did a lot of thinking and wonderings, and then we at the end come up with this hypothesis. We're going to do the same process with the Explore. And at the end of the Explore, we're going to go back and revise our hypothesis and say, well, now with this extra information, maybe I might change my hypothesis or I might just add this extra information on because now I know the stuff about the water loss. From here, we're going to go into the actual notes. And again, teachers, we're busy. You got a lot going on. I'm not going to suggest to you that you start anything over from scratch. If you already have pre-prepared notes, if you have a particular way that you do notes, that works perfectly. All you're going to do is just add in annotations. Now, if you don't have a particular way you do notes, I do suggest Cornell Notes, because then we can like very explicitly say like evidence from our Engage and our Explore. And then, so in this model, black writing would be student inputs and the purple writing would be like what the teacher is guiding on the board. So we want to have our students' questionings and wonderings on our notes. This is answering this thing I wondered, or maybe this thing that I'm wondering is sparking this question. And we want to like note what's evidence, what's reasoning, right? And so like this question over here, does salt take away water? They're like, all right, so would this be evidence or reasoning, right? And we're having that conversation with students. We're talking about the delineation between the difference between evidence, the difference in reasoning, and making a claim. And this works on several levels. So just with the notes, by the time we get to this, our students want to know, like, it'll be the first time your students care about like learning about osmosis and tonicity because they're invested in the answer about the mummies, right? Kids are invested by the time you use the notes, so you actually have kids paying attention when you give them. But also it works on this level of we're using their language over and over, which is helping them to grow this confidence and feel like, okay, I knew something. They're bringing up what I said, so like maybe I am kind of smart. Maybe I can do this science thing, right? And then the modeling is going to pay off when we actually give students an assignment to do themselves, because now they feel a little bit more confident because you've gone over explicitly how to find the evidence, how to do the reasoning, and how to make a claim. And so they're much more willing to try, which is just like what all of this hinges on. And also what's really important here is that we're presenting like, okay, this is the piece of evidence that we found. Here's our reasoning. And then we made this claim. So we're showing students that even though if you use the CER format, and when you write out the answer, you put the claim first. That's actually sort of the last piece of the puzzle. Um, and it also was like showing them like we make our revisions. And then from here, I suggest like on your board, actually write out what the answer would be to if it were a writing task. Write out what the solution would be and go over it with a rubric with your students. So help them understand exactly how, like what they're being graded on and what's expected of them. And if you're not comfortable writing it out in front of them live, you can have an exemplar. Instead of you actually creating it together, you can just like, here's somebody's answer to like our guiding question. Are they correct or incorrect? And that can be like, if you leave some errors in there, that can be kind of a quick check. Are they noticing the errors or not? Right. But it's also, again, helping them feel more comfortable with the writing because they have an understanding of what exactly it is that you are expecting of them. And this rubric is from NSTA, the National Science Teacher Association. I would suggest making it a little bit more specific to your class, but I just wanted to have this as an example. So at this point, students have a full model of a CER. They've engaged with this material and they've applied it to a real world scenario. In our last two E's, if you use the 5 E's, what we're going to do now is give them a new scenario or a new question. And this can be students conducting a lab and using their own data. Our Explore can also be conducting a lab. This can be providing them a completely new CER like scenario in total. Like the Hold Your Wee for a Wee, where the woman drank too much water and passed away from overhydration, or somebody who gets really ill from dehydration, and having them apply their learning to that real life scenario. Or you can extend sort of that same topic and just give them new data. And in this first part, that fourth E, we are going to have them outline their response and not fully write it out, just outline it, and then go and undergo some peer review. And then depending on where you are in the year, you might want to do this in different ways. So earlier in the year, this outlining part might take place in a group, and then you gallery walk it. Whereas later in the year, where your students are more confident, they might do it individually in peer review. And again, this is building their capacity to do it and their willingness to do it because they're going to have this another chance for revision before they actually turn it in for a grade. Because a lot of times students don't turn it in because they're nervous about getting it wrong. And this takes away a lot of those nerves. And then finally, they're going to actually turn in this assessment. So they revise that outline based on their feedback. They use the rubric to self-assess and revise again if necessary, and they turn it in. And I like to have my students turn in their self-assessed rubric with it and have on their response labeled what their claim is, like highlight it in different colors or underline it, or like put a C next to their claim, E's next to their evidences, and R's next to their reasonings, just to make it a little bit quicker to grade. And these are some example assessments of what you could use, like that would match what we've done so far. And again, like, so I'm back into the spiral review of we're naming the organelles that are involved. We are talking about homeostasis. So we're spiraling review this in. And again, um, like if you notice in the explain, like I mentioned the organelles in those notes as well. So we're just pulling in those pieces that we've already talked about that connect to this current unit all the way throughout. And then I thought I had copied again, but we could actually come back and just straight up give them this, because this works as an assessment now because they have the foundation that they need to do it well without like all the anxiety and nerves. So that is an overview of this process that I use with my students. If you want to try it out, there's an overview of the process I use with my students. If you like, you have a handle on it, have at it. I hope it goes great. And I would love to hear how it works in your classroom. And of course, this will be in that free resource folder indefinitely at the moment. I have no plans to take it down anytime soon. So you can revisit this as it gets closer to the school year or when, however many times you want. But if you're like, okay, that was good, but I need a little bit more. I want some templates. I want some resources. I want you to walk me through step by step how I would use this to make a lesson plan. You can sign up for the Secondary Science Writing Task for Inquiry workshop. And so right now, today is June 2nd of 2024. It is $35 and it'll be $35 through Tuesday, June 4th. On June 5th, the price will go up to $50. And then it will go up again, I believe, on June 12th. On June 11th, I will run that workshop live. And so anybody who has registered by June 11th will get an invitation to the live workshop where we'll take about 90 minutes and go through each step together. And you'll leave the call with like an outline of a lesson. But in addition to that, because like I know it's summertime, everybody's not trying to do PDs over the summer. There will be self-paced modules. So it's set up as a course so that you can do it at a self-pace at your own pace and just go through the modules when you have time and when you feel like it. And that will be available. You'll have lifetime access to the course. And so like even if you come to the live session and then in August or November or something, you want to go back through it, those self-paced modules will be there and the live workshops will also be uploaded to that course. So you can jump in now with the pre-launch sale, and the workshop will include the self-paced modules in 10 minutes or less bite-sized chunks, frameworks, pocket PDs on writing across the curricula and doing some interdisciplinary stuff, file review pocket PDs and templates. And it will include access to, if I run this, so I know I'm going to run a live session in June. I'll likely do one in July as well. But if I decide I want to do one in November, you'll also have access to that. And so it is like, this is literally the best value. Right now it's valued at about $125. That value is going to increase as more and more gets added to it. And any other offers I have this summer, anybody who has joined this workshop will get a discount to any other offers I have summer of 2024. So it will be June, July. And the price will increase on June 5th. Self-paced drops begin June 5th. But there are a couple of resources that are already posted. There it is. There's a slide. Thank you so much. Let me know if you have any questions. Please feel free to email me. Find me on socials. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to DM me. Let me know if you have any questions. And if you are watching this relatively soon after I posted it, I will be hopping on Instagram Live tomorrow, June 3rd, at 11:30 a.m. Central Time, which will be 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, feel free to hop on there and ask me questions as well. Thanks so much. I hope you found this super helpful and see y'all around. Stay curious, y'all.